Welcome to the second meeting of this year of the Defense and Veterans Affairs Committee meeting. Glad to see all of you here. The only official item that we have is one bill to be presented, and then I had a few other things I wanted to cover with the committee after we do that, some things that have come up. At this, I'm John Yates, Chairman. And at this time, I'll ask the Honorable Tommy Benton to come up and present his House Bill 126. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I bring to you today House Bill 126. And 126 is, I hate to use the expression simple bill, but it is a bill that would designate April the 19th as Patriots Day. I want to take you back to your American history. On April the 19th, 1775, we had what was referred to as the shots heard around the world at Lexington and Concord, that started the American Revolution. The bill reminds us of that. We wanted to make sure that there was something that was important to Georgia during that time, and so I'll take you on lines 20 through 25. We put in there about action here in Georgia on April 19, 1778. We had naval action here in Georgia, and so we are simply asking that we're not asking for it to be a holiday. We're not asking for anything other than to be a day of remembrance that is the start of the War for American Independence. I'll be glad to answer any questions from the committee, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I got a comment. I took the liberty of checking with our attorney for this committee, Mr. David Bundreth, and I said, right off his bat, I said, this won't cost us anything of any significance, not like we're sending people home on a holiday or something. And I asked him how many days we had like this already, and I think it's 27 or something like that. And it's things like Georgia Day and Flower Day and a few things like that that celebrate certain things. And so that's what I did on it, and as I say, it's that type of bill. Is any questions from everybody had a chance to look at it then, I guess. If you give you a minute to look here and see if you have any questions about this Patriots Act that we have here.
Did like the Daughters of the American Revolution or anybody endorse this bill or somebody? I'm just curious.
There's a resolution last year for the SAR and the DAR, and I am a member of the SAR.
What is this SAR? I'm sorry.
Sons of the American Revolution and Daughters of the American Revolution. And we did it as a resolution last year, and just thought it would be, instead of having to come back and do a resolution every year, just designate this as Patriots Day for this bill.
Thank you.
You have a question?
Thank you, Representative Bennett. What is the practical impact of this designation?
Well, there is no monetary impact. We just simply designated a day. We hope that people will pause and remember what occurred on April 19th as far as the American War for Independence is concerned. That's basically what the bill is.
And you have two different events that have occurred on, okay.
We have an event that, of course, is a shot heard around the world, and then we have an event that happened here in Georgia. And the person that Colonel Samuel Elbert, he is important.
Before you came in, I mentioned that I had checked with David Bundit, our attorney, and he said I think we have about 27 similar things that recognize certain things of importance to Georgians, but that don't necessarily it's not a holiday where people go home or whatever.
Schools are open.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
that
it
sort
has
of
no
thing.
effect on anything like that. It's an observance that people think is important.
Your patriot groups like SARDR, they remember this anyway. And I was telling you, actually, we did this as a resolution last year. And I felt like we keep having to do it as a resolution every year. Just do this bill and get passed. So it's,
Is anyone else? Do I have a motion?
I recommend do pass, Mr. Chairman. But I would have one question after we get a second.
You have a second?
May I speak?
Yes, moved and second. It says any other discussion?
Yes. Fortunately, you and I have served on a number of years together, and I want to make sure this has nothing to do, and I'm sure it doesn't, with any of things that I, as an African American, would be questioning. And I don't want to go into details about it. We're not talking about anything with Confederate, anything that could be woven into this. No. Okay. That's fine. I think this is very hard, and I can support you. If it was things were better, I'd tell you. No, right, I know, and I'm saying you and I have had discussions over the years. And I, of course, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, you and I have talked about, of course, the
What
importance
number
of Black history. You've talked about the importance of Confederate history, and I have no problem with your position. But I just want to make sure that might have been not anything here I might have overlooked. And I certainly can support you on this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Do you have a motion? Yeah, you made the motion and seconded it? Okay. All those in favor of this, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? With the motion carried, this will be moved on to down the road, and appreciate you coming, sir. Thank you. I have 2 or 3 things here if y'all got a few more minutes. Did you get a message from me about this thing of homeless veterans? Did y'all get a message?
Yes.
Did everybody have a chance to send some in if you wanted to? I mean, we gave them a couple of 2 or 3 that we had received. I would listen. I mean, I went through that meeting the other day, and it's what all I agreed was that we would write and urge them to pass the grant, and they had a bunch of other things they talked about, but that was the only thing I was involved in. I have two bills that I'm working on, and if I'll pass them down if you want to co-sponsor them. It's up to you. One of them is Child Custody Interstate Jurisdiction Act. What happened here was the Defense Department, 2 people came down from Washington, D.C., and one from South Carolina from the Defense Department, and met with Senator Harbison. He's the new counterpart over in the Senate, that took John Douglas's place when he left. He's head of this same committee. And you can, what the problem comes about is the military, they don't want to pass a federal bill for some reason. They'd rather, because I guess the federal has certain restrictions that they can't tell families what to do like the state can, is their interpretation. It's a problem when one of the 2 spouses gets sent off to war, and so what this bill does is more or less tells the judge that you can't do anything permanently adversely with any of the children involved in the marriage until the guy comes back, until the soldier comes back from war. So that's what it's mainly about. As I say, it's up to you. I've signed it here, and if you all have a desire to sign that, I'll pass it down the line. the other bill is it's not an invite resolution as such, but the Speaker asked me to handle this just like he did the other day when we had the National Command of the American Legion, that this guy, he's got a long name, but this soldier calls himself Joe Cap. And he went off to war and lost a leg. And it's almost a miracle that he could convince the Defense Department that he was still able to do a job. I think he's like a company commander maybe. And so he convinced them, went through all the tests and physical and whatever to prove that he could still be a leader, and he's over there fighting a war again. So what this resolution does is it recognizes two things. It recognizes him for what he did, and it recognizes this organization called One Voice that have gone out and made up a lot of money for soldiers in this kind of condition. And so that's the two things that the bill does. And as I say, the Speaker asked me to handle it, and what we're going to do is we're going to have about 6 members of the family come in. I think March 3rd probably is when it's set. And they'll be recognized, but it won't be like, it won't be quite as extensive as an invite resolution. But if you want to sign off on this, you're welcome to do it. I mean, as a co-sponsor.
Mr. Chair? I have a question about, thank you. I have a question about the first bill that you're discussing. This relates to permanent child custody arrangement decisions that would be made while one spouse is off fighting, or is it if the couple is getting divorced or something?
No, it says that the judge can't make a permanent decision on children in the absence of the other spouse.
So anything related to the children, not just custody? I wasn't sure. I wanted clarification about that.
Anything in relation to the handling of anything that you do in a family.
Okay.
With children of the two spouses.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can I have a question? Of course, I can understand you using the term spouse. I was wondering, does this carry over to just the state statute concerning marriage, marriage as recognized by the state, or does that also have to do with common law couples, which is very, very common now? People are living together and having children, and it's not recognized necessarily by the state.
What I understand it is any spouse that by law has custody of, two of them have custody of the same child.
I apologize. When you say spouse, we're talking about
Husband,
recognizable
well, they wouldn't have.
marriages
I guess it's.
by
I think
by
that,
the
I
state.
believe the word they use in that spouse. I think.
Well, actually,
I'm saying this is a spouse, or we're talking about people in a common law situation.
It
I was
doesn't-
wondering where it's applicable.
it doesn't, I'm reading it for the first time, but it doesn't, so far I haven't seen the word spouse in here. It refers to parents only. It doesn't refer to spouse.
Yeah, I should have said parents. Parents of the child. Is what it,
Okay,
what it
Let's-
is. Yeah.
is that broadens the scope of it then.
Yeah.
I would interpret it, you guys are lawyers, young lady here's a lawyer, but I would interpret that as a broader scope. And I think either, regardless of how we feel about a common law or people in a committed relationship, whether it's a statutorily a committed relationship or a relationship that's just based on time and commitment, it sounds like this is applicable in both cases.
I'm glad he mentioned parents, because that's the one that would have a reason to be concerned about what happens to the child.
Okay, that's fine.
It looks like if I may, looks like it contemplates not just a divorce, a situation of parents divorcing, but rather parents who maybe already are divorced or maybe have never been married, who share a child and one of them is deploying. So I think it's going to be broader than just between a married couple by design.
The main point that the Defense Department is making is anybody fighting a war has already got enough things to worry about, and what this is attempting to do is to take this out of the realm of having another problem for the people fighting a war.
I'm with you, 3.
key thing here is keep in mind, this doesn't have any restrictions on what temporary
I need to get a copy of it.
measures must be implemented, with the judge. I don't know that there'd be any restrictions here on what temporary arrangements like to be made.
Is that the same one? I didn't get the
Well, yeah, it says while they can't make any permanent, the judge can't make any permanent settlement of any issues while the person's off fighting the war.
90 days.
That was the Defense Department's main concern. As I say, we're not passing on anything today on it. We just, as I say, if you want to sign off.
Mr. Chair, just a comment. I have heard about this bill and that there had been a problem in these situations, and I believe that I've been told that Oprah Winfrey did a show segment on this particular problem, which I thought was kind of interesting.
And what was her take?
I think
what was the result?
I don't know if there was a result, and I don't want to speak too broadly since I didn't see it personally, but I believe it's the intent of this bill that while, as you said, someone is in the service of the country, that it's not the time to be making any permanent custody or other child decisions.
That's the whole idea.
Right.
The judge can't do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I do believe that there's been some attention to that, is what I wanted to tell you.
Were you in the service, weren't you?
No, not personally, my family.
Oh, I see.
I'm not an honorable veteran like yourself, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I was fortunate that I had a good marriage and I didn't have to worry about that one while I was over there.
That is good.
It's outstanding. I can't imagine anybody facing that. Any other comment on this, or is anything else anybody else wants to bring up amongst the group here?
I just think you should provide lunch, Mr. Chairman.
What's that?
I think it's awfully disrespectful you didn't provide lunch.
I guess the varsity took care of that for me, and it didn't cross my mind. The varsity threw the equine people down at the corner. I'm an equine man. I used to plow a mule and all that.
Lord,
You weren't
Lord, Lord.
eating equine, were you?
Well, it could happen, you know. If the meat inspector passed it, I guess.
Economy's tough, isn't it?
Those of you wasn't in here the other day, I think that we did furnish you a copy of the new rules. We had a tough time getting a quorum last time, so we did move it down to from 4 to 3 for a quorum. That shouldn't bother anybody if they listen and will come in here and show an interest. I mean, I'm hoping that everybody will. We're not going to have many meetings unless you give me some comments about what you want us to do. Normally we can do it together. We can do it separately. We invite the military over, the National Guard. We invite Commissioner P. Wheeler and his group over, and we invite the Georgia Defense Force, and we can do anything else. Also, if you're interested, on that. What number are you?
Number 9, Mr. Chairman. One of the things, Mr. Chairman, over the years that you and I have served together is that I think that it's time for us to start reaching out to future generations. There are a number of high schools that have our ROTC programs. At some point, we might want to consider inviting some of these kids down, and at least have two things. Some of these kids have never seen the Capitol, and number two, but since they are military-oriented, we should invite them down to at least say, hey, we appreciate it. If it's no more than just ask them to stand up in the gallery. So at some point, if you could look at possibly doing that and perhaps look at a way that we can extend the invitation.
That's a good idea. A few years ago, Griffin High School had such a good ROTC program that I successfully, all of you are familiar with the fact that we interview people who go to North Georgia College for scholarship, military scholarship, and go to Georgia Military College. Everybody familiar with that?
Yes.
The one in charge of was a retired lieutenant colonel that fought in Vietnam, and he ran the one at Griffin High, and it was such a good program. Normally you have 3 per congressional districts, but Griffin High gobbled them up every year because they had such a good program. So the Army gave me a citizenship award for sending 15 over the years from Griffin High School to North Georgia College. I talked to General Borland. Y'all know him, the one that runs the one down in Millersville. It's a 2-year Georgia military, and he's having real budget problems. If y'all want to look, and you would like me to bring that to your attention, it seems that it's not treated as a state school like North Georgia College is. And North Georgia College, you go there on a military scholarship, and you come out, you're a second lieutenant, but you have to serve 4 years in the National Guard or the Army to pay them back, kind of like going to West Point. They don't have such a restriction, I don't think, with the 2-year college, but I've interviewed some people that went down there too, and that's a very fine school, but they are on a much tighter budget than North Georgia. Recently, North Georgia came here, and was the day we were out, I believe, and they came to my office and talked to me. There was several, the colonel and several of the military sergeant and so forth from up there. But that's a good point. Last time when we had reapportionment, one of the places where we listened to people giving their ideas on reapportionment was at North. It was up at North Georgia College. Very fine school. That's a good idea. We'll see what we can do on that. Anything else? You want to try to have all those people I mentioned at one time, or you more in one meeting, like Pete Wheeler and his people, Commissioner Pete Wheeler and the Army. The Army usually brings over all 3 generals. And then, all y'all familiar with the Georgia Defense Force? They serve with, they buy their own uniforms, they serve without pay, and they had to fill in when the National Guard's all fighting a war. So when Katrina came, they worked with the people up in Marietta up there at the airfield, and they did a lot of work connected with that without any cost to the state because they're all volunteers. You want to have them all together or what?
I think you've got right there. Each one would be.
Have them
each one would be worthy of.
Well, we could bring a Georgia Defense Force with the other generals, and then have the veterans as a separate item. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll set it up with them. Then we'll try to have it at a time when most of us can be here. Any of y'all have a conflict? I had one with reapportionment today, but since there's hardly anything going to be covered in there, I didn't worry about it. But y'all got a conflict at this hour?
I do. Generally, I'm going to have a conflict.
Okay.
I don't this week, but judiciary non-civil.
Yeah.
It's from 1 to 3:30 on Wednesdays, Mondays and Wednesdays.
I kind of checked to see what David Bundred, he's our lawyer, and I told him that we would not require him to be here unless we had a bill that had something we needed his help on or whatever. But it's kind of hard not to have a conflict with as many committees that we have, but try to work around it best we can. Is there anything else anybody wants to bring before the committee?
Mr. Chairman, you'll follow through with an invite for the high school ROTCs?
Yeah, let me put it this way. If any of you, now Griffin High was up here the day the school was, but not ROT as such. Do you have a group that you might want to invite?
I believe there's a couple in one high school that I'm familiar with, and I can check. But if you decide to do it, I'll be glad. Maybe in our districts, we can limit it to our districts, the high schools. There might be 2 or 3 high schools in our districts.
Well, you're always welcome to, of course, to bring anybody to the Capitol. You know, schools come up here all the time, and I've got I've got a Navy group in southern part of Henry County, and I've got Spalding High and Griffin High in Spalding County. All three of them are outstanding ROTC programs. Anything else? We'll be adjourned then until next time. Thank you very much for coming.